स्टार्ट।
सभी को सादर नमस्ते। आज के इस 5वें सत्र में जो जो शिल्प कलानिधि श्री कृष्णजी विनायक वजे जी के 191वीं जयंती में पालन किया जा रहा है। 13 तारीख से शुरू हुआ इस प्रोग्राम में 13 तारीख को उसका प्रथम सत्र रहा और 14 से 19 तारीख तक विभिन्न शास्त्रों का संकलन इसमें किया जा रहा है और एक एक वक्ता हर सत्र में उनको विभिन्न शास्त्रों का प्रेजेंटेशन दे रहे हैं। आज 5वें सत्र में जो विषय है वो है स्टडी ऑफ एंशिएंट सिविल इंजीनियरिंग इन इंडिया। पहले मैं इस संगठन के बारे में कुछ बोलना चाहूंगा। इस संगठन का नाम वैदिक शिल्प शोध प्रतिष्ठान रखा गया है, जो भारतीय विज्ञान एवं प्रौद्योगिकी की प्रस्तुति का लक्ष्य रख रहा है और इसका उद्देश्य है भूतकाल में पूर्व आचार्यों के कार्यों का अन्वेषण, संग्रह व संकलन और वर्तमान काल में इसका अध्ययन और शोध और उसके बाद भविष्य काल में उसी के अनुरूप साहित्य निर्माण, समाज और उसको व्यवहारिक उपस्थापन में लाना और उसी हिसाब से पठन पाठन में उसको प्रयोग में लाना। जो शिल्प के 100 प्राचीन ग्रंथों का संग्रह तथा पूर्व आचार्यों के कार्यों का अन्वेषण, संग्रह और संकलन इस अनुष्ठान की वजह से हो चुका है। दूसरा जो इसका लक्ष्य है वो भारतीय विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी विषय का पाठ्यक्रम निर्माण का चल रहा है, जिसमें इस अनुष्ठान में विभिन्न गुरुकुलों को इसमें जोड़ना है और उसी में इस पाठ्यक्रम को लाना है और समाज में इस विषय को प्रस्तावना के लिए उसी के अनुरूप साहित्य प्रकाशन किया जा रहा है, जिसमें प्राचीन विमान कला का शोध 2018 में किया गया है। उसके बाद अभिनव स्मृतिकार शिल्प कलानिधि श्री कृष्णजी विनायक वजे जी का गौरव ग्रंथ भाग 1, जिसका नाम व्यक्तित्व आणि कर्तृत्व, 2019 में इसका प्रकाशन हुआ इस प्रतिष्ठान के माध्यम से, जिसका ऑनलाइन लिंक आप बुक गंगा और अमेजोन में भी पा सकते हैं। पहले शिल्प का मैं परिचय देना चाहूंगा। जो नाना प्रकार के विधान, वस्तु तथा यंत्रों की सहायता से जिस धातु, साधन एवं वास्तु के कार्य को संपादित किया जाता है उसे शिल्प कहते हैं। इन 3 खंडों को आगे विस्तारित कर 10 शिल्प शास्त्र, 32 शिल्प विद्या एवं 64 शिल्प कला के रूप में रूसी आचार्यों ने प्रस्तुत किया है। अब इस विषय में मैं आज के वक्ता को स्वागत करता हूं। उनका नाम है अभिजीत जी, जो गोवा के प्रसिद्ध सिविल इंजीनियर हैं, जो हमारे ट्रेडिशनल आर्किटेक्चर ऑफ इंडिया के ऊपर भी काम कर रहे हैं। तो उनको मैं अभी स्वागत करता हूं और उनको अपना प्रस्तावना रखने के लिए कहता हूं। जी, अनम्यूट कीजिए।
Yes. Namaste. I will begin here with the prayer to my Guru Maharaj. ओम नमः प्रणवार्थाय शुद्ध ज्ञानेक मूर्ते निर्मलाय प्रशांताय दक्षिणामूर्ते नमः। मेरे गुरु महाराज, उनको वंदन करके मैं आपसे ये प्रेजेंटेशन करना चाहता हूँ। सबसे पहले आई एम वेरी ग्रेटफुल to Vastu Shilpa Foundation for calling me to give a presentation on a topic which is very close to my heart. In fact, this is a topic which is not only my passion but also my profession also. When I speak about Vastu Shastra, I am also speaking about a part of my life, part of my profession, and part of my what I seek in my life. Before I begin to speak about Vastu Shastra, I would like to briefly introduce my viewpoint on this aspect. See, I am an architect practicing in a variety of projects related to master plan, area development, archaeological, historical styles, temple, Vastu architecture, iconography, urban development. In this whole endeavor, my attempt has been to keep our traditions of architecture and iconography, जिसे हम स्थापत्य शास्त्र और परंपरा बोलते हैं, उनको जीवित रखना है. So we have to keep sustain them and continue them. So when I present today, I'll not be presenting a glossary on Vastu Shastra, because I am not going to run you through chapters of Vastu Shastra, because the references and issues with reference to Vastu Shastra are innumerable. Now, when we speak about Vastu, the question is, what do we speak about? What do you people look upon Vastu as? Do they look upon Vastu as something which is science? But if you look around, you will find people look upon Vastu Shastra as a means of providing a lot of solutions. They look upon Vastu as a site selection. They look upon Vastu as location of well, location of a tree, orientation of entrance door, number and placement of windows. You look around you. In the market, you will find there are lots of books which deal with that. So one of the things which happen with this is that people start thinking of Vastu Shastra as one book from ancient past. This is what most of the people tend to believe, that there is a one book called Vastu Shastra and it deals with this. So many times people ask me, you are dealing with temples, so are you dealing with Vastu Shastra or Mandir Shastra? Because people are not aware. And I congratulate Vastu Shilpa Pratisthan for taking this issue, because they will be able to enlighten people that the extent of Vastu Shastra. Now, is Vastu Shastra one book? No. If you look at it, the entire process of compilation of Vastu Shastra has been part of our Bharatiya civilization. Right from the earlier period, this Shastra, as we look upon it now, has been formulated out of compilations of various people. In fact, this has been a part and parcel of our entire culture. So if you look at the entire process of development from the early eras to even as late as 14th century or 13th century, this process has been a part of our culture very much. Now, how did this happen? Now, if you look at it, the earliest references of Vastu Shastra you start finding in a Vedic literature. There are a lot of references in Rigveda. Rigveda refers to Vastupati. That was a formative period of our Vastu Shastra. It refers to Vastupati. It refers to Harmyas. It refers to various elements of a kind of a gram development, development of a village, development of a settlements. After Vedic literature comes the epic literature. That is what we call generally as Mahabharata and Ramayana. That has innumerable references. In fact, I remember there was a controversy on Ramasetu, and one of the very noted politician asked, is Ram an engineer to build a bridge? And I remember in one of the seminars or whenever the debates, I had said Ram was not an engineer. Prabhuji was not an engineer, and he is not required to be engineer. He hired an architect. He hired an Stapati to build Ram Setu. And if you look at Valmiki Ramayana and read it properly in parallel to Vastu Shastra, you will find a section dealing with selection of a Stapati. You have qualities of Stapati being enlisted there in a Ramayana. And then the selection of architect is there. Then there is a collection of material, Daruja Sangraha, Shailaja Sangraha. All these references which we find today are already there. There are references of construction hierarchy. There is a references of Sutragrahi. There is a references to Vardhaki. There is a reference to Takshaka, the one who dresses the stone. And there is a reference to what we call today as a bar chart. They have given the progress of work in a form of a bar chart, what we today call it. So you will find lot of references. Only thing we have to look for it. After this period, you will come across Buddhist literature, that is Jatakas and Palis. This has a very exhaustive references on architecture. There are innumerable references, especially if you read Unmaga Jataka, there are references to that. Then if you look at Pali canons, I remember reading two Buddhist treatises when I was in Upper Dharamshala. Kulavaka and Mahavaka, where Tathagat, Buddha, speaks about overseeing a construction as one of the duties of an order. As a duties of an order. So we have a lot of references coming in from this particular period. Not only we have references, but we start seeing lot of sculptures representation in this particular period. If you look at Western Ghats and the kind of development which take place, the kind of the 5 kinds of abode prescribed by the Tathagat himself, and read it in consonant with that, you will find there is a lot of systematic development of a Vastu Shastra. There are references to Vastu Acharyas also. Then there is a Artha Shastras. Kautilya's Artha Shastra speak about lot about Vastu Shastra. We all are aware of various Puranas and the sections it contains about Vastu Shastra. Even Puranas speak in detail about various facets related to architecture. After that, we have a vast body of literature called Agamas. Now, Agam are principally divided either into Shaiva or Vaishnava, and there are Devi Agamas also, but principally it is Shaiva and Vaishnava Agamas. In Vaishnava Agamas, again there is a division of Pancharatra Prasadhanam or Vaikhasanagam. And all these agamas have agamas essentially deal with a philosophy and like a Vastu, they are all encompassing treatises and they speak about lot of things. And Vastu is one of the important parts of it. There are rituals, there are consecration rituals, there are various ways in which worship is undertaken. But there is a sizable section in certain agamas about architecture. And in my practice, I have experienced that different agamas there is a tradition of adopting different agamas in different parts of the southern India. For example, in North Canara, I found Vatul Agam being more referred to. And you go little southward or towards Telangana and all that side, you find Kamika Agam being referred to. Then there is a Pancharatra Prasadhanam Agam, which is profusely used in Tamil Nadu. After that comes Tantra literature. Mahanirvan Tantra is one of the Tantra treatises. There are many Tantra literatures. There are many Tantra Grantha. Brahat Saita, after that, is one of the principal reference point because it is one of the treatises which have a lot of historicity to it. It is considered something belonging to 3rd to 5th century CE. There are different viewpoints about it. but it is one of the older treatises which you see, and you find a systematic and beautiful references of where the temple is to be located and all other aspects. But again, all this text or all this literature are not principally only Vastu. It speaks about many, many things, and Vastu is a part of it. Then you have Pratishtha works, which is generally used by acharyas. Now, there is a bit of overlapping between Pratishtha works and the Shilpa works, where acharyas overlap into Vastu and Vastu overlaps into acharyas' arena of works. Then there is a lot of miscellaneous works which cannot be grouped in any of them, and there are innumerable. And last, I would refer to Shilpa works. Now, Shilpa works has a comprehensive body of Vastu literature. It is a vast literature. You have different traditions, different schools, different rishis, and you have a repository that is a compilation which has come across a very long period in the history and that being composed together. That there are lots of Shilpa treatises. In fact, Gopinath Rao refers to almost 300 to 350 Vastu treatises. Personally, I have come across almost like 120 Vastu treatises. There are innumerable works. And these works have been compiled by various rishis. So the word I use compiled because it has been, we always believe that the knowledge comes to us from the higher guru, from the higher order. So these rishis look upon themselves as a medium of conveying this knowledge. So there is a text related to Atri. There is a lot of text related to Vishwakarma. Mayamatam related to Maya Rishi is famous. There is a Narad Vastu Vidan, there is a Narad Shilpa Shastra. There is a Shukra Nitisar associated with the Shukra Guru. Or there is Prahlada Tantra by Prahlada Rishi. Then there is a Markandeya Puran also. So, in such a way, there are various rishis who have compiled a major text, and or Vishwakarman may not be one particular rishi; it could be a series because there are various treatises across a broad span of a time. So, it could be a lineage of rutis, or it could be school of rishis who are contributing based on that. Then there are various names have been cited. Now, this is necessary to understand because it will enrich us our understanding of what is Vastu Shastra. I will not read through all of this, but there are certain rishis who have been cited as kind of principal uh, people who have compiled certain treatises or parts of treatises. So they have been cited as an authorities. Then there are a lot of gurus, there are rishis whose names and passages from which who are quoted in different treatises, like in Brahaspati is quoted in Bhattopala's work, or Bhrigu Rishi is one of the most quoted rishi. So you have a lot of such references and a lot of such gurus coming from different areas of our Bharat Desh. Now, this has been a topic of study of which is a northern school, which is a southern school, or what is a central Indian school. Because our country experiences different regional variations in climate, in soil types, in kind of a crop pattern, and so these different treatises are classified based on various references. This is a work by Dr. Bhattacharya, where he has tried to classify it into kind of a northern school and southern school. Now you will see here there are only 30 treatises, or there are only 30 granth quoted here. There are innumerable works. Matsya Puran, Agni Puran, Bhavishya Puran, Shaiva Gamas, Vaishnava Pancharatras, which is a distinctly southern this, Mayamatam, Shilparatnam, Kashyapa Anusamabheda. So there are a lot of such references. Now we come to a very interesting aspect. What is a Vastu? Because the moment I was told to speak on civil engineering, I was intrigued. Is Vastu civil engineering? Is it a technical handbook? In the field, when you go, people always try to confront you, especially people specializing in modifications and such works will explain, is Vastu a science? Then I come across innumerable articles by different people trying hard to prove that this is a science. And in doing that, we are doing a lot of damage to Vastu Shastra and credibility of Vastu Shastra. Because certain sections cannot be bracketed into present definition of science. Is it a philosophy? Is it about art and proportion? Because a lot of material is on art and proportions. So is it an art and proportion? Now here we need to understand that in Bharatiya traditions, we do not isolate these fields. We look upon these fields in a very inclusive totalitarian view. If we understand this, so next time we come across a question saying, is it a science? Is it a philosophy? My answer would be yes, but more than that. Yes, but more than that. It is a technical handbook. Yes, but it is more than a technical handbook. So Vastu tradition encompasses life in its fullness. Vastu traditions or Vastu Shastras speak of making life both ideal as well as fulfilling through its endeavor of design, planning, and creation. We all know that Vishwakarma and the divine architect and the main task of creating order in the world. But I want to bring to you a very important aspect of Vastu in this my talk today. See, what is a Vastu? Vastu is a science, yes, but more than that. Vastu is a technical handbook, but more than that. Vastu is aesthetics, more than that. What is a Vastu? To me, Vastu is an all-pervading effort, contemplation to create a cosmic order. We consider Brahmaji, as a person, as a divinity who created the world or created this creation as we see it today. The contemplation of an order in which he would create the world, the contemplation in the manner in which this world will unfold further is a cosmic order contemplated in a Vastu. You will find traces of this thought in almost most of the treatises or most of the early literature. See, the growth is when the embryo is conceived. See, it is an all-pervading cosmic order which is contemplated. Vishwapnoti Sakalam Jagat. How did this order came about? If you look deeper in our treatises, you will find that 5 elements form the basis pillar of this order, which are this: Akashad Vayu, Vayur Agni, Agnir Apaha, Abhyudyaha Prithvi, Prithivya Oshadaya. From space, from Brahman came the space. From space came the air. Can air exist without space? No. From the air came the fire. Can fire exist without air? No. From the fire came the water. Can water exist without fire? No. Because water is water as long as there is a latent heat in that. And earth is a creation related to water. Now all elements and substances have evolved thereafter on the earth. So these are the 5 essential elements of the order contemplated in Vastu. And you'll find reflection of this in principal concepts of Vastu Shastra. The reason I am speaking more than about civil engineering is that every time somebody speaks to me about Vastu Shastra being science, Vastu Shastra being this, I feel we are missing out the bigger picture. Now, Earth, as we spoke about, is considered the primary Vastu. Even the etymology of the word Vastu, the root Vasa, to dwell, Vasu, the earth, Vasundhara, the earth. So earth is a principal Vastu because all other Vastus created are created over the earth, and the creation is a part of the earth. So our treatises identify earth as a principal Vastu. Now, how does this cosmic order actually reflect in terms of material or actual creation, or how it is contemplated? If you look at Vastu in a cross section of Vastu and different treatises, you will realize that this entire world is ordered in terms of hierarchy of scales of Vastu. There is a lot of references of a Desha Bhumis. Now, in modern contemporary world today, we look upon this as a regional planning or zonal planning, where we identify areas and zones of a identical climate, identical soil typology with identical vegetation or identical cultural group, and identify that as a zone, as a one entity, and plan with that. We have this kind of a references coming up in Vastu in detail. It speaks about why I'm making this clear, because many times these references are taken in their narrow context. After Desh and Desha Bhumis comes the reference of Puras and different kinds of forts also. There are different types of forts have been contemplated in Vastu, as well as there are different kinds of Puras contemplated. After the cities or towns comes the Grama Vinyas. So where you have references of different villages, the types of villages, the kind of villages. After the villages or gram comes Devalaya, or rather, Devalaya is a part of it. So this is a body in which there is a huge literature. Major part of Vastu Shastra is comprised in this temple architecture. After that comes a Sabha, the assembly halls, what is required for civic responsibilities. Then comes Gruha Vastu, dwellings, houses often from a very mundane, simple houses to complex royal palaces. All of them have been referred to here. And then comes yantras, asanas, yanas, that is vehicles, furniture, movable furniture, and different yantras. If you look at it from reverse, you will find that Grama, Pura, Desha comprise, include the below four components. So it is a clear cut hierarchy. Now, all this is envisaged and to be planned in such a manner that it takes place in a right place, space, then right time, muhurtam, in a right dimensions, pramanas. So now, if you look at these scales, systematic scales of creation, and apply principles of space, time, and pramanas, we are creating a harmony in our creations. Now, how does this harmony is created? So there is an interesting principle of Shadvarga. Now, I am aware of certain calculations who go to 16 components, but for sake of this presentation, I am confining to Shadvarga in a 6 principal components. Aya, Vyaya, Yoni, Var, Tithi, Nakshatra. What it means? Benefit, income, expenses, direction placement, day of the week, part of Murta, stars, placement of stars, and what it actually transpires is what comes to you, what goes out of you. So you are looking at the growth. I has to be bigger than Vyaya. You are looking at a growth. You are looking at being in a right direction on a right day at the right moment, and all your efforts are aligned with the universal force. Now, if this all are in line, in harmony, what can stop you? So that is a basic idea. Now, how does this actually translate in physical reality? For that, we have design templates, which we call as mandalas. Now, there are innumerable mandalas, starting from the simplest mandala, Sakala Vastupada mandala. Pada here refers to a single cell. So then you have Pechaka Vastu Pada mandalas, who has a 4 cells here or 4 pada. And each of these mandalas are used for specific purposes. So you have Sakala, you have Pechaka, then you have Pitha Vastu Mandala, then you have Mahapitha Vastu Mandala. So you will see the multiplication of cells go on increasing. And as they go on increasing, you will see a particular names of Pada Devatas being added and increasing. From Mahapitha onwards, you start seeing the presence of Brahma. This more higher version of mandalas or design templates are more used in more of the Vastu works. Then you have Upapita Vastu Mandala, then you have Ugrapita Vastu Mandala, Standila Vastu Mandala, which consists of 49 cells. Now, all I have not listed down a particular uses pertaining to each of this mandala. One of the reasons why I have not listed is because their uses and variations are based on a particular regional affiliations. So that is another topic in itself, actually. Then we come to the most important mandalas, that is Manduka Vastu Mandala and Paramshaika Vastu Mandala. Why this is an important mandala? Because here you find all Pada Devatas adequately represented. All Pada Devatas are represented here. So Manduk and Paramshaika are the most used mandalas in Vastu Shastra. Most of the structures are being used based on this. There are different traditions. Some traditions refer to Manduka as appropriate for temple, while some say Paramshaika is also appropriate for temple. So I will not get into that debate. But these are one of the most principal mandalas. And there are various versions of it based on which particular treatise. But what is clear is the overall placement of these Pada Devatas do not alter. There may be small variations here and there, but they do not get altered in terms of their principal position here. Now, why this is important here, I'll tell you. One of the reasons why these mandalas are important, when Grama Vinyas, which we are going to see further, or Nagar Nivesh is being done or planning of is done of villages as well as towns or houses, temple complexes. Treatises refer to placement with reference to Pada Devata. These Pada Devatas are nothing but different attributes of universal force acting on this material world. And these forces are represented in a one diagram, because here we seek to make peace, harmony with all the elements, and we intend to live in harmony with the nature, in harmony with these universal forces. So you will find references. When references are given, references that yes, you can make an entry in a Bhallat path. Now where is a Bhallat path? It is on the north side. Or you can make a reference in Mahendra Pada. So there are such references come in Vastu. So this knowledge is very much essential. Then there are further mandalas of 100 cells and above. I will not go. That is an expansion, and it can go still further till 1000 cells. Now, as I explained to you, now each of these Pada Devatas have a peculiar guna or peculiar attribute. Now, for example, in a village, in a particular Vastu treatise, you will find that in a village, if you want to place a particular deity, like of a form of a Vishnu, they have given a specific position of that form of Vishnu. Or maybe they have also included Matrukoshta and Shankar also as a part of it, because that Ishapad is something which nobody can take away from Shiva Bhagavan. But you will find references of each of these devatas in terms of a particular placement. If you want to place Balabhadra, he comes in a southern path. So if you want to put a Bhaskara, that is Surya, he comes in a Aditya Pada, that is in the east corner. So even the placement of gods, devatas are also as per the Vastu Mandala. So this design template applies to both mortals and immortals. So this is a basic design template as contemplated in a Vastu Shastra. Now we come to the most interesting part, and uh, if we have looked upon the principal elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, in our previous slide. Now, if you have seen our all of these slides, they speak of square as a basic form. Now, how a form is defined? A form is defined by four corners. That defines the profile of a particular form. Now, if you look at Vastu Mandala, the four corners are occupied by four principal elements. In Isha Pada, that is the northeast corner, you have a water, Jala. In southeast, you have a fire. In southwest, you have earth, whereas in northwest, you have air. And the center, which holds all this together, is Akash, which is a space also contemplated, a pada belonging to Brahma. Now, this is a very interesting quote which I found, so I'm using it because it explains what I would have explained in a bigger passage in a single sentence. Center of a mandal is both shunya, that is absolute void, and at the same time it is a bindu, source of all energy. It is where that world is perceived to recede and to grow out of. So there are various references as to how this entire process of pure thought culminates into a dynamic creation. Now, if you look at a variety of aspects or influences which Vastu can be associated with, if you look at it very closely, you'll find the first one is a cosmic influence. We are talking here of heavenly bodies in a celestial space. Now, then after that, there is a lot of astrology, there is a reference to Devata, the nakshatras, and there are other metaphysical aspects related to Vastu. Some of them we have referred to in earlier slides. Then there is a reference to sun. Directionality plays a very important role in Vastu. This is where you have a solar energy, tapping into solar energy. Now, when you look at Marma, Mahamarma, issues related to Marma, there is another emerging understanding of a geomagnetic fields. Now, we require really hardcore research to speak about that. But there is a lot of people producing papers on Hartmann grid, and but this requires more careful calibration and understanding how this actually is composed as a particular section of Vastu Shastra. Then comes the geology of a crust. Now, all Vastu materials come from the crust. All of our Vastu creations rest on a crust. So you will find that the geology of a crust and regional variation among them are playing a very important role. Then hydrology and ecosystems. Water is one of the principal elements. There is a lot of references to particular vegetation. Especially, you will find this in the descriptions of Desha Bhumi and the appropriate Bhumi for habitation. So we have to make contextual studies with reference to Vastu Shastra and other Shastras and understand that how hydrology and ecosystem are relegated in Vastu Shastra. And the last is socio-cultural beliefs. Though this comes in the form of rituals, you will also find reflection of this in a particular form of a placement. You will find particular ethnic planning, or you will find references to placement of particular communities in a particular pada. And the kind of ethnic grouping which you find, which relates to socio-cultural belief. There is also a viewpoint that as our culture develops, we are going more from a metaphysical view of life to more materialistic one. However, I believe that both the views of life coexist in Vastu Shastra. Here we come across one of the first Pancha Mahabhut. When we speak of Pancha Mahabhut, water is one of the most sought after element. There cannot be a life without water. Now, the photograph which I am showing you is of almost 1,000-year-old tank, which was restored by us, our firm, for archaeology department. Now, why water is important? Because, and you will find a reflection of the importance of water in terms of references in variety of texts. For example, I will not go into details of each of the texts, but for example, a Mayamat refers to placement of temple tank in village, or Manasara refers to in Parivar with a temple tank. Vishwakarma Prakash speaks about Jalashay. And then Prasad Mandanam speaks about importance of tank and rituals associated with it. And if you go backwards, and if you look at the Puranas and compilation, you will find a lot of references being given about construction of Jalashayas, plantation of a particular trees, particular leaves falling into the tank and fishes eating it and giving a great deal of punya. So these are the kind of the references which you start seeing it, and then you have to understand that water also has been a very important part of our architecture. And this importance has actually resulted in creation of wonderful elements or architecture of water, as I would call it, Jalastapat. For example, this is one of my most favorite temple, and Pushkarni, Modera Surya Mandir. This has a solar axis to it. If most of the tanks you'll find, especially if you look at southern India and their temple prakaras, you'll find tanks located in an upper Vatsa corner, northeast. But here, the tank is aligned on a solar axis. And incidentally, the entire calibration of this tank with a number of deities inside, their numerology, its Padavinyas, and everything, if you look at it, this has a strong solar axis. And incidentally, this is the one of the few Surya Mandirs in our country. The other being a tank from Hulikeri. This is also my favorite tank. I have visited it many times. This particular tank, Kalyani, as it is called locally, has a lunar reference. Very interesting. One, you have a solar reference. The other has been built on a lunar reference. And there are rituals associated with that aspect also. Incidentally, number of deities in this are 28. This is a plan of that. And this is a very interesting tank, and I think it requires more research in understanding of how. So we need to have more research in the different tanks, Jalashayas, and the principles or philosophies behind it. Then comes one of the most important part, that is villages and town planning. I have presented here few of the maps. If you look at on your right side, they are in variety of shapes. Some of them are very uniform, like in a very circle. You'll find some of them, I have not presented them, but in a perfect square also. While some are not perfect exactly square. These are towns as contemplated in Vastu Shastra for a particular or specific purposes. There are certain towns which have been described as a capital towns. In fact, if you look at Padmadi Nagarapuradi Vesh in Vishwakarma Vastu Shastra, it has more than 12 numbers of cities. More than, I think it goes to 20 also. and each of them relegates to particular configuration and particular purpose and particular region and particular placement of natural resources. There are certain towns which are or grama vinyas which are associated with a mercantile work or trading towns. There are certain where which are associated as a with a defense establishment in mind. So you have different towns. I have given few of the names, but if I start putting all the names of Vastu Shastra, maybe 1 hour would be very insufficient for me. So there is such an immense wealth about Vastu Shastra. The problem is now, which I am going to ask, is why is this knowledge or traditional knowledge used in our town planning? We are blissfully unaware of this knowledge. At the most, this becomes a small chapter, history of town planning, where people learn about it and forget about it. But it is a time. Now, there is another interesting aspect which I want to show here is in all these three examples, you will find there is one focal element, like Atma, or like a core, the soul, as you look at it, which is at the center and which holds it together. Sometimes it is not at the center also, it is at the end, yet it holds it together. That is conceived mostly as a temple. Why is it so? Because it overlaps with the concept of avaranas. In Prakar Parivar Vidhan, a temple complex and its growth into a settlement is contemplated in the form of avaranas. So there are 5 avaranas or prakaras. They are called, first one is Antarmandal, then Antarhar, Madhyahar, Maryada, Mahamaryada. So the town expands in a very concentric manner, in a very systematic manner. Now I ask a question: is many times people say, okay, this is ancient Prachin Vastu Shastra. The reason why I don't use word Prachin, because the moment I use Prachin, people look upon it as something which is non-relevant, something which is only literary references. Fortunately, we have certain living examples. Even though a lot of destruction has taken place from 13th, 14th century to almost late periods by invasions and religious persecutions, some of the examples have survived. Now, this is again a favorite example of mine, a Ranganath Swami temple located in south. Now, what is interesting is that it is not a temple; it is a temple town. It is not a temple town; it's a proper pura nivesh in that sense. And another interesting aspect is that I spoke of Panchavaran. This is a temple with considered with Sapta Prakara formation. And another important aspect, it is located in between two rivers. One is Kaveri and her tributary, and British were the first ones to recognize this, the importance of that, because they were the first people who tried to document this town. Now, the map which I am presenting was commissioned by the first Surveyor General of India under British rule, somewhere in the 18th century. And they were so much fascinated, they employed a lot of people to map it out, and not only map it out, they located each resource in that or each element and its use in as a part of that documentation of a map. Now look at it closely. This is a picture which you can even now see it from a Google. What is shown in the red in between is expanded on the left hand side. So you see first avarana, then you see second avarana, then third avarana and fourth avarana. As each of the avaranas expand, the sacredness becomes more and more dispersed with the other activities. So until we reach to 6th or 7th avaranas, where we have many other civil non-sacred activities intermingling with them. But the soul, Atma of this entire this is a temple. Now, can it be used in contemporary planning? Now, what I'm presenting you is one of my projects here. The reason why I'm presenting is that this is not just an example from the past. We can still use it. This was a live project where for a one village with a temple in the center of that, and they wanted to expand or look upon next 20-25 years and how layered growth of a temple can be contemplated and how they can restructure or reorder villages or certain developments in last 50 years in conversation with the Vastu Shastra. So here we thought of first layer, second layer, third layer, and we contemplated growth like that. Now, this is again where we have applied all these relevant principles that we have used Vastupada Mandala, location, cell, references, and tried to create a systematic growth plan for this temple for next 20 years. Now, this was a very small village. This is yet, again, when many times people ask, is Vastu Shastra relevant in modern day technology? Now, this is one of the projects which, for which I was commissioned and which I undertook for a very influential client on 3,000 acres of a land. This was Om Bharat. This was designed to be as a gateway of India, spiritual gateway of India. This was designed with the infrastructure for 5 lakh daily visitors, transport hub with parking, bus station, train, metro, hospitality district for 1 lakh guests. Then we had a cultural district with amphitheaters, auditoriums, satsangs for maximum 1 lakh capacities. Then we had religious activities, yaknishalas, puja manda, pratashala, processions, lot of cultural showcase activities. Now all these was designed by me based on Vastu Shastra. Unfortunately, I cannot present to you the drawings of this project because I am bound by a confidentiality clause that until this comes about, I cannot share the drawings. But I can share you the principles. Now, this is one of the projects where we presented it to central ministers, we presented, discussed with different religious gurus, took their opinions, debated with them about placements, the way it is to be placed, and all cherished. I can show you some of the principles which we used. Now, design of this was based on a variety of Vastu Shastra principles. And another interesting aspect is that at the same time when they were dealing with me with a layout of this plan, at the same time parallelly there were a lot of technical companies with which they were dealing with to make this as a smart city. How technology could be incorporated, how the city could be made smart, how transport planning could be integrated as a part of it. So here I had to present based on different aspect of vidhis, and the entire this now plan which I'm showing you on left is a conceptual plan. The actual plan is not like that. It is much more complex and detailed. So the reason why I'm again presenting this is we sometimes feel that Vastu Shastra or its references are prachin and not related to present. Not so. My effort is to make it relevant even today. Then we come to yet very interesting aspect, that is temple. Now, this is a section on which you will find lot of sections of Vastu Shastra dealing with. And there are a lot of metaphysical aspects, there are a lot of conceptual aspects which deal with this particular section. But what I would like to put forth you that temple complex is an image of macrocosm in a microcosm. How? See, temple and its complex with a seed of pure consciousness at its core, what we call as Garbha, Beiram, as it is referred in South. So Garbha holds the core, or where it holds the seed of pure consciousness. It acts like an embryo and it emanates growth in layers. What are those layers? We have seen it before. Those layers are actually avaranas. And the placement within that is designed in a such a way with all elementary forces which we saw in the terms of Pada Devatas, which are symbolized in a form of mandala, appropriately made peace with appropriate location. Further, this is accentuated by Parivar Devatas, with each of the Devata have with a particular attributes. Larger temples will have from many of the temples have only smaller temples have panchamurti alayas or panchishta, but more complex we have 64 and more than 60, hundreds of you'll find hundreds of parivar devatas. I have worked with some of the temples where there are more than 60 deities, and then each of the layer is guarded by a dwara devata. So there is a lot of symbolism, and all of these ये पूरे विश्व ब्रह्मांड का सूक्ष्म स्वरूप है. So that is the reason this is where the Vastu is concentrated. Or Vastu Shastra, you'll find lot of literature dealing with that, lot of scriptures about temple itself. Now, when we speak of temple, as I spoke in my earlier days, that we have a lot of variations from region to region. So we have something called Sekhari Shikharas, Shikhrotam Prasadas. We have in the central India Bhumija Shikharas. Then we have Latinas. Then we have Kalinga. And then what we call sometimes in Orison texts is a Dev Mandir Paddhati. You come southwards, you will find what is generally classified as a Dravida, generally classified. Then you have different variations of these temples from Karnataka to Tamil Nadu to coastal areas. Then you have Manushala Chandrika, Tachashastram, oral tradition from Kerala, which deals with a peculiar type of temples. And there are regional subtypes, there are variations, there are adaptations across the different centuries. I had the grace and blessing of my Guru Maharaj to be able to work on a different typologies. So on the left hand side, what I have presented are the snaps of few of my temples and their typologies. I must have myself in my short span must have worked on almost more than 24 different typologies. I'm not talking about number of temples. So you can imagine length and breadth of this desh and amount of the wealth in terms of variations of temple typologies. I am not going in depth again on these aspects. But while dealing with these reconstructions, you can always use all the principles of temple. You can use, this was one of the simplest process in which we used 6 principles of like Ayadi Shadvarga has been used. 6 manas, manopkaran of temple from Adhisthana, Stambha, Prastara, Karana, Shikhara, Stupi, all have been used. Jati Prasada typologies we have used. So these are various temples. There are variations from these regional typologies. Now here you should understand that our creations was not static. At no point of time we have conceived temple and stopped there. So every century came and every generation came, contributed and took forward this the field and stream of Vastu Shastra. This is yet another temple of mine which has been created by me. This is in Goa itself. This is its master plan based on various attributes of it. And there is an interesting aspect of in temple design of Chanda Vinyas. What is Chanda Vinyas? Chanda Vinyas, see, if you look at a mantra, what holds mantra together is a chanda. It's a rhythm and a character which holds it mantra together. Similarly, you have Chanda Vinyas holding the entire complex of temple with a similar language, similar symphony of forms. And it is upon you how to develop it further. And this can be adopted even in present day complex. Now, I have shown you drawings, but this entire complex is created already. Yet, this is another case of Shani Shingnapur where I am working on redevelopment. Now, again, all these principles which we are speaking of from our Prachin Vastu Shastra are relevant even today. Even with modern requirements, changing needs, this can be still utilized. Still, these different principles can be used, and these principles are for us in many way are guiding us how we undertake redevelopment. This is a picture of that. Now, this particular Tirtha Kshetra had a component, modern components like resource management was there, infrastructure planning was there, contingency management was there, devotee flow pattern was there, and conversion of entire Nala filled with debris into Tirtha Kshetra, as well as creation of monuments. This is almost, 85% completed.
होगा आपको
Stop हो गया?
एक
streaming
Please.
is on.
Yes. So this can be adopted. I'll be very brief because I'm taking a lot of your time. In fact, when we speak of temples, there is innumerable literature, but home is somewhere where our heart is. So many times people ask me, houses of earlier era were easier, simpler, single-storied ones. So I give them an example of Dantiya, Judeo Mahal. Now, this is a multi-storied palace. This palace has been consisting of 5 stories. So on your left, you will see an image, a photograph of that. And on your right, you'll see the basic plan and axonometric. Now, this is a second story which you see here with central structure, central spire, and then you see a third story. Then you have a fourth story, and cyclically coming down to this is a fifth story. So it is very clear this is a 5-story structure, and all the principles of Vastu can be applied here, or rather this was constructed based on a Vastu Shastra mandala planning. And this can be studied, this has been studied by many researchers, not from the point of Vastu, but from other historical aspects. It is a time now we undertake studies of our historical structures. Well, now this is a particularly of Paramshayika Mandal and its distinctive zones of Pada Devatas. And on the right side, I'm showing you space configurations of these Pada Devatas or these Padas in Judeo Mahal. The concept of Vithi, degree of sacredness towards a Brahmasthana, which we discussed in earlier. Now, if you look at this, we come to a very interesting aspect here. Now, this particular structure which I showed you is belonging to a very late period. Vastu Shastra and its development has largely remained intact over a large period of time in the history. Why is it so? Because Vastu Shastra is not conceived to be at a full point. It is conceived to be in a dynamic motion. We always say Namo Purvajayacha, Namah Parajayacha. Salutations to our ancestors and salutations to the ones yet to come. This is how our Bharatiya culture works, and Vastu Shastra is a part of it. So there is an inbuilt mechanism in Vastu Shastra so that whatever renovations, restorations, redevelopments takes place in conformity with the kind of the structure it is. Now there is a 35th chapter of Mayamat, Anukarma Vidhan, which speaks in very detail, and it gives a detailed insight into restoration, renovation, reconstruction, conservation of a temple and related structures. Now, this is a very basic guideline. There are various other treatises which deal with various other aspects also. But it tells us is what kind of structure can be made at which place and which particular temple is to be dealt in what manner and what time only you should undertake renovations. Now, here there is a small gap which has happened. This has happened because of invasions. Now, the nature of our Vastu Shastra is such that Vastu Shastra was developed as a part of a continuous process. So there was always actual architectural development in the field, and there was a confirmatory compilation of that. And at the same time, so we had a certain portions which were carried forward, certain portions which were added later, and we had a lot of that is the reason you find slight differences at times. And you can find architecture reflection also in terms of variety of styles and the kind of refinement which we have. Somewhere this process of documentation and compilation, both technical compilation and process of development, stopped somewhere in between 13th to 15th century. So there is a big historical gap, and we have lost many treatises also in this course. So whenever we have to undertake renovations or restorations of these structures, we should make a referential study of historical values of that particular temple, or historical context, or dynastical context, or cultural traditions associated with that temple. Now, why I'm saying this is because I see many a times many times I come across meaningless creations which do not fit in the stream of Vastu. I am not saying I have replicated many 12th, 13th century temple, but the task or goal is not replicating a certain golden era. We are not here to go back to a particular point in the history or particular point in our past and say this is a golden. That is not how our culture works. Our culture is like a river. It is getting enriched by various streams and going further. The task is that something which began like a small spring communicated together to create this giant, vast expanse of this field of Vastu Shastra. We have to ensure that it maintains its integrity. It maintains its. I'm not saying it should not be modified. What I'm trying to say, whatever happens, it has to happen in such a way that you do not pollute the waters of Vastu Shastra. So this is the reason why I'm saying you have to have a lot of study, lot of references before actually. So many times when somebody asks me, what is this? I said, wait. I refrain from giving an answer immediately. I go back to my text, I go back to notes, make a detailed study, and then come back to a person. Because sometimes we cannot just pick a quote from a particular text and start putting it, because it will create more confusion, it will create more problem. So every time you have to be very cautious while dealing with these all aspects. After the temple comes yet another interesting aspect, iconography, that is Pratima. And I begin here with a very interesting quote. Raso vai saha, so vai rasikaha. What it means is the Lord himself is all essence. He is the great enjoyer. Now, what is contemplated here? What they want to say is that the very field of aesthetic appreciation, they have made it divine. They have associated divinity with aesthetical appreciation. If you look deeper, maybe we can have a separate session on that, aesthetical appreciation and divinity. How they have structured aesthetical appreciation. You will have to refer to Vishnu Dharmottar Puran or other treatises also to understand this concept of appreciation. Raso vai saha, so vai rasika. A beautiful quote. Now, Pratima Shastra is a very evolved Shastra. We can refer it to various names. We call it Murti Shastra. We can call it Pratima Vidhan. But it is a very evolved and very important components of Vastu Shastra. What it comprises of? It comprises of knowledge of various forms and images. Now, each of the god has different forms. And they are not, now many times when I speak of forms, yes, people say Vishnu has 24 forms. We know Chatur Vishanti Avatara of Vishnu, but it is not. there is something called Viha Avatara of Vishnu. Accordingly, there are different Puranic stories and there are avatar of Vishnu related to that. Then you have Dashavataras also, which are the simplest form of avatars. In case of Shiva, there are such complex forms. There is a form where Shiva combines himself to become 8 principal elements. And there are forms of Shiva relating to Pancha Mahabhuta and 3 other more elements, Shava, Bhargava, Bhava. There are different forms related to Shiva. There is a particular temple where we have recreated more than, I would say, 100 forms of Lord Shiva in this last 10-15 years in wood and stone. So you need to have a knowledge of these forms and images. Then materials and compositions. Now there are various materials you can use from metal, from stone, various types of stones are there. Identification of the type of the stones to be used. There is a concept of Purush, there is a concept of Matru, there is a concept of Napusakalingi stone. So there is a male stone, female stone, and there is a neuter stone. See, when we do Lingam, Shivalingam, it is a combination of these many different 3 varieties of stones. Now, there is a particular knowledge associated with materials. Then there is a reference to Lepekarana, in the sense you make images out of paste and other elements. There is a Chitra Shastra or Chitra Lakshana. I will not speak more on Chitra Shastra because I am sure there is another speaker who is going to speak on that. Then, one of the most important aspect of Murti Shastra is Dhyana Shloka or Pratima Lakshana. A verse defining how the idol is. Now, this is very, very crucial. Many times, people try to identify a particular Murti and say, this is this. The moment you ask him, he starts giving his own logic, his own reasoning. But that doesn't work in Vastu Shastra. Especially Murti Shastra is very, very, very particular. You have to give a reference of Dhyana Shloka. In my field, many times I had to face different Dharma Gurus. So I had to be very, very, very clear that nowhere, otherwise the concept of making a wrong idol falls on your head. Then there is a dimension of images in proportion to edifice. So especially if the idol is for a worship or for the worship reasons, that there is a sense of proportion. And it is not just one equation. There are an idol in a Garbhagraha can be referenced by 8 different ways. There are 8 different ways where you can exact that particular height of the idol or proportion of the idol. Simultaneously, when you talk of Parivar Devata, this references vary. So you have to be very clear. Again, there is a issue of a Talamana. I am not speaking here on the placement of a deity. That is yet another. There is a Madhya Sutra, there is a Brahma Sutra, there is a Vishnu Sutra and Shiva Sutra. And there is a whole mandala where which deity is to be placed in Garbhagraha at what position. So many times when I give dimensions for placement of deities, I give a dimension. This is off center, you are saying, because yes, that particular deity is going to come on a Vishnu Sutra that is going to be off center. So that knowledge has to be there. Then our Murti Shastra combines the knowledge of Talamana. See, the body proportions. Talamana doesn't reflect to body proportions. So the highest Tala is a Dasha Tala. From a Dasha Tala, you have a Navatala, then you have Ashtatala, then you have Saptatala, Shadatala, Panchatala, Chaturtala, Dvitiya Tala, and Ekatala. Ekatala would be referred to Nagas and Asuras. Dashatala is a tall figure. And balancing dimensions of a Dashatala is very, very difficult and an art in itself. I'll show you some of the pictures in further. Then there is a Anga, Mukha and Hasta Mudras. So different stances different mudras, different facial expressions, they are also part of Murti Shastra as a part of this entire cosmic order which we are conceiving, which starts from a Desha planning and comes right till an icon. Then there is a Ayudha, or the items which he holds in his hands. This is a very complex, and sometimes there are variations in different treatises based on regional and cultural and panthic associations. Abhushanam. A particular deity is known to have a particular kundalas. Even female deities are known to have a particular dress. Murti of Vishnu is known to have a particular ornament. So all these are suggestive of, sometimes you are able to understand idol even from a broken part, that what it idol belongs to. I remember a case where idol was wrongly classified into something else, and then I looked around at the bracelet of that idol. It was almost 8 feet tall idol, and I could see the head of Ajab, that is a goat, hanging to that. And then I could really understand it, what the idol was. So sometimes a small detail of Abhushan tells you which particular deity that particular idol is. Then there is a Varna, color. Then there is a Vahan, consorts. For example, Surya Dev will have two female deities sometimes on sides of it. Sometimes you have Chamradharinis, but sometimes you have a deity which are actually his consorts. So you should understand that which god is associated with which Devi. Then there are other associations with Rishis. For example, my Guru Maharaj, Murti of my Guru Maharaj, Jnana Dakshina Murti is shown with the 7 Saptagurus down there, Saptarshi down there. So it is a very systematic science. Now, this is a photograph which I am giving you. This is a sense of proportion. When I say now, this is a particular idol belonging to Ashtatala. Now, if you look at a particular tala and the kind of proportions it creates. So we have a, now here look back again. We have a stream which speaks of bringing a world order which starts from zoning planning, zonal planning, area planning, Desha Bhumi, Nagara, Grama, and it comes down to a pupil of an idol. So this is a sense of pramanas. So what I was speaking of, it speaks from the higher, most complex level to smallest detail. Now, in all these are technical aspects, but the art aspect is a bhava and mudra. Skill is also important. Now, if you look at this particular sculpture was created in last 10 years. And look at the skill of a craftsman. But look at with the skill also bhava and mudra. This sculpture is a combination of Central Indian sculptures and their bhava and detailing and sculptural skills of Chalukya period. This is a synthesis of two styles here. So each craftsman has to contribute in terms of poetics of each of the idol. On left, you have an idol which is in a Navatala, and on right, you have an idol which is almost in a Dashatala of Shiva. The left is of Vishnu, and on the right, you have Uma Maheshwar. This is a recent idol. Now, this is the kind of proportion which we are talking. Now, this particular on left hand side, again, you have Halshi Varaha Murti. Look at the stance, look at the dynamic stance. A lot, if you draw sutras from his stance, you will see that even though his stance was dynamic, it is very balanced. And on right is a new Murti which we had done. This is in the Samabhanga, from Atibhanga to Samabhanga. And this Murti of Mahalakshmi, Kolhapur Mahalakshmi, is of Ashtatala. So Each of the murtis has its own traditions. Now again on left with the yellow box, I am showing one of the early sculptures of Uma Maheshwar. Look at the proportions. This is from Maharashtra. And down below you will see yet another sculpture. And look at the proportion. This is what has happened to us in last 200-300 years. Now look at the again right corner. I am presenting here one of the very old Kala Bhairava sculpture, which was lying in a jungle, which was not in a worshipable form. So this new Kala Bhairava is created in yet another of my temples, following the equations of earlier Kala Bhairava, his stance. But again, a bhava is something which is a very crucial and it can vary from artist to artist. Now, this knowledge is very essential. While many a times I again say, be careful when you quote. Because I'll quote here in one of the, this is about 10 years back, in one of the temples when I was doing Dwara Devatas, a priest called me aside and said, Abhijit, आप थोड़ा हमारी पूजा पद्धति देखिए, मैं यहाँ पे ज़्यादा नहीं बोल सकता. So I waited next day and I saw their puja paddhati. I realized, though the idol of a Devi looks principal, the entire puja paddhati of Madhva Sampradaya is geared that that small pratima of Vishnu becomes principal element there. So at some point in history, the entire puja and ritual paddhati has changed to Vishnu Pradhan in that temple. So my deity has to come with reference to Vishnu as a principal deity, though I don't see him there. So there is a certain degree of intricacies when you deal with iconography. And then again, Madhva Sampradaya doesn't follow Mayamat Manasar. So for that, he has his own text also. So you have to use that text. So this is how the in depth you need to have an understanding of Murti Shastra before you actually embark. In fact, before I started on this, many times you are sure of things and you immediately pronounce that this is it. But knowledge of this vastness has made me very humble. It has told me not to be sure at times, be very sure. Wait, contemplate, and then answer. Because you cannot afford to be wrong here. Because many of the temples or many of the complexes which I have created, they are designed to last for 1,000 years. So you cannot afford to have a mistake going all the way till 1,000 years. We should not pollute this great water of Vastu Shastra, great river of our culture. I end with one particular quote here. But before I end, I would like to tell you about this sculpture itself. All of you are aware, this is being referred as a cosmic dance of Shiva. This is a figure of a Nataraja. People have spoken in detail about it. And through this dance, you want to see, if you want to see 108 Karan Mudras of Shiva, go to Brodeshwar. I went there and I saw that. I was filled with joy and pride in my heart. It is through his dance the great Shiva orders the world. And we are part of this order. And let us continue this order. Dhanyavad. These are some of the images, graphics which I have used from some of the books. Most of them have been my projects, but some of the graphics have been used by me. So this is a reference to it. Thank you. Namaste.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद अभिजीत जी. और अभी मैं हमारे मुख्य अतिथि जी शैलेश भिंडे जी को अपना वक्तव्य प्रदान करने के लिए अनुरोध करूंगा. शैलेश भिंडे जी, अपना माइक अनम्यूट कीजिए.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। वैदिक शिल्प प्रतिष्ठान नागपुर और इतिहास संकलन समिति नासिक द्वारा श्री कृष्णाजी विनायक वजे जी की जो 151वीं जयंती के उपलक्ष्य में ये शिल्प सप्ताह का जो आयोजन किया है 13 से 19 दिसंबर का, इस महान कार्य के लिए मैं सभी कार्यकर्ताओं को, सभी संस्थाओं को दिल से साधुवाद देने की इच्छा हो रही है कि बहुत ही उत्तम उपक्रम है। और आज का जो अभिजीत जी का लेक्चर हुआ वो भी इतना माहितीपूर्ण था कि काफ़ी सारे कंसेप्ट जो केवल सुने हुए थे, लेकिन आज ये पूरे डिटेल में देखने के बाद, सुनने के बाद काफ़ी मन को प्रसन्नता हो रही है। अभिजीत जी, आपको भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। गोवा से तो मेरा पुराना रिश्ता है, मैं संघ का प्रचारक रहा हूँ गोवा में, तो अगली बार जब भी गोवा आऊँगा तो आपसे मिलना होगा ही। भारत जो है ये ज्ञान का महासागर है, जिसमें अलग अलग बिंदुओं के विषय में ये सप्ताह में जो अलग अलग विषय लिए हैं, मेरा तो मानना है कि ये साल भर ऐसा ही चलना चाहिए, केवल सप्ताह न हो के वैदिक शिल्प का ये पूरा वर्ष चले तो भी ये कम पड़ेगा। लेकिन गत 200 वर्षों में हमें यही सिखाया गया है कि भारत गरीब है, बेरोजगार है, लाचार है, अविकसित है, क्या क्या हमें सिखाया गया है। और आज जो योजना बनाने वाले और योजना का अमल करने वाले सभी उसी शिक्षा पद्धति से गुजरे हैं, जिसकी वजह से सभी के मन में एक न्यूनगंड सा आ गया है कि हमारे पास कुछ नहीं था, हम ऐसे ही थे। वास्तविकता ये सारा चित्र स्पष्ट करता है कि भारत वास्तव में अद्वितीय भारत था, भारत है और आगे भी रहेगा। यानी 24 कैरेट सोने के गहने हमारे पास हैं और कोई आर्टिफिशियल ज्वेलरी लेके आता है और हम उसके ऊपर मोहित हो जाते हैं, ऐसा आज का वातावरण है। यानी मेरे हाथ में स्मार्टफोन है और कोई वो नोकिया का पुराना वाला मोबाइल लेके आता है कि नहीं नहीं ये स्मार्टफोन है, और हम भी उसको मान लेते हैं कि हाँ ये स्मार्टफोन है। वास्तविकता भारत जो है वो विश्व गुरु बनने की क्षमता रखता है, लेकिन उसे पता नहीं है कि हम विश्व गुरु थे और आज भी बन सकते हैं। और ऐसे ही विविध कार्यक्रमों के कारण ही लोगों में सही जानकारी मिल पाएगी, जिससे न्यूनगंड हटकर एक भारतीय होने का अभिमान जागृत होगा। और ये सारे विषय जो हैं वो अपने शिक्षा में कैसे आ सकते हैं, उसके विषय में भी हमें आगे कुछ करना होगा। और बहुत अच्छा लगा इस कार्यक्रम में। अभिजीत जी, फिर से आपको ढेर सारे धन्यवाद। और वैदिक शिल्प प्रतिष्ठान, इतिहास संकलन समिति नासिक, इन सभी को मेरा बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और ऐसे कार्यक्रम होते रहें और ऐसे कार्यक्रमों में आने के लिए मुझे बुलाया जाए तो अच्छा लगेगा। मैं भी इस सारे आप कार्यकर्ताओं में, मैं भी एक कार्यकर्ता के नाते ही आपके साथ जुड़ना मुझे अच्छा लगेगा। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
मैं शैलेश भिंडे जी का अभिवादन करता हूँ, जो कि गो विद्यापीठ मुंबई में कार्यरत है। और अभी कुछ प्रश्नोत्तर का कार्यक्रम होना चाहिए, पर प्रश्न अभी आए नहीं है। अभी कोई प्रश्न हो तो श्रोतागण पूछ सकते हैं। प्रश्न आ नहीं रहे हैं तो
मुझे आपसे इस बात का भी धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं मैं आपसे, क्योंकि आपने पिछले 4-5 दिनों में से, ये 5वां दिन है, लेकिन पिछले 4 दिनों में से हर एक शास्त्र का इतने अच्छे और सरल स्वरूप में उसका विवेचन हुआ है। ये एक संग्रह, ऐसी एक लेक्चर सीरीज है। इसके लिए मैं आयोजकों का धन्यवाद देता हूँ। ये बहुत ही अच्छा आपका उपक्रम है।
जी धन्यवाद। मैं सभी श्रोतागण, उपस्थित मान्यवर और प्रमुख अपने जो वक्ता, इन सभी का मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं। और आज का कार्यक्रम यहाँ पे समाप्त हुआ, ये मैं घोषणा करता हूं। जी नमस्ते।